Welcome to K&D's Homestead. I'm Donna. Today I'm going to share my bread recipe with you, and I'm going to make a 2-pound loaf of bread. The thing is though, I'm going to make it in the bread machine. You know, making things homemade does not necessarily mean you have to do it the old-fashioned way. I have come to embrace and love using the bread machine. For the bread machine, it's a 90-minute process in the machine doing all the kneading for me. That way, I can put my ingredients in and walk away and do other things. And I love it. My mother gave me my first bread machine. And I was kind of stubborn. I didn't want to use it either. I believed I needed to do all of that manual kneading. I took the machine and I put it away on the shelf. It sat there for about 2 years. And then one day something in me said, you know, I want to know what this is about. So I found a recipe and I put it in the machine, did everything like it was supposed to, and it turned out beautifully, with one exception. The recipe I found was a little strong on yeast, and I didn't care for that strong yeasty flavor. So since then, I have, changed it up just a little bit. I've added a little more butter and a little less yeast, and I've worked it out to where I love this recipe. And I use it often to make loaves of bread. The first bread machine I got was the Breadman. That was the one from her. And I like it okay, but it has a small vessel. This is the vessel. It has a little bit smaller vessel, and the recipe was for a 1-pound loaf of bread. Well, I was kneading a lot of bread, so I bought myself a second bread machine. I got the Hamilton Beach brand. I like it just fine. They all seem to work the same way, but this one had a larger vessel where I could mix up a double batch, which would give me a 2-pound loaf. So now I do use both. I use the Breadman and the Hamilton Beach. Any brand is probably just fine as long as it has the little paddle in it, which it will, and does the kneading process. The differences that I found was the number of programs that are on the machine. The Hamilton Beach that I use has a lot of programs, but so far I'm just using the dough program. So I want to share my recipe for this white loaf bread. It is delicious. It comes out wonderful. And the reason I like to make my own is because, one, homemade is always better, and two, I can slice it up in the thicknesses that I like to have. I think if you try this recipe, and if you have a bread machine, you can try this, and I think you will love it. Now, this recipe that I'm going to share can be cut in half. I have a double recipe because, like I said, I'm making a 2-pound loaf. Now, this recipe is also perfectly fine if you're going to, do all of the kneading and make it by hand yourself. The ingredients still work. It does not have to be in a bread machine, but I'm going to use the bread machine today. Now, to make your bread, there are so many different styles of dishes that you can put your bread dough in. There's those glass Pyrex that are made specifically as a loaf dish. I have several of those, but I find they do not hold that much. And like I said, I need a lot of bread. Now, I have purchased this pan right here. This is a 2-pound loaf. They make them in 1 pound as well. And any amount that you're going to make determines the size dish that you're going to use. But there are so many styles of loaf pans, and any style will work. I like this right here because this lasts me a while, and I can make several batches in one day of this bread, and then I can freeze it, or I can pre-plan future meals with it. One thing I like to do is make couple of these loaves, cut them thick like Texas toast, and I make a head French toast and put in the freezer. That works out great. This is my Hamilton Beach, and it was not very expensive. Actually, there are so many styles on the market today. You can find an affordable one just about anywhere. I bought this one off of Amazon. And as you can see, we have buttons here, cycle, crust, loaf size. You can change all kinds of settings. And then there's a little gauge right here that tells you what you're going to use. I use the number 8 cycle for dough. The vessel that you put your ingredients in sits down in here and locks in. And you just close it and turn the setting on, and the machine does all the work for you. And this is the vessel. It holds there's a paddle that goes inside, and that paddle is what goes around when the machine is working and kneads the dough. In this vessel, you have a paddle. This is called a paddle. Now, this is a little difficult to clean. I usually have to take a Q-tip or something and go down in there and clean that out. And I think I'm going to clean it one more time. And that paddle goes right here on this stem and fits inside. It's pretty simple. Okay, I've got everything pre-measured. In this bowl, I have my flour. This recipe, the 2-pound recipe, calls for 5 cups of all-purpose flour, which I've already measured out and have in here. 4 tablespoons of sugar, 2 teaspoons of salt. Now, these are my dry ingredients. I've got all of them mixed well in here. And the thing about a bread machine is you add all of your wet ingredients in the vessel first, and then you add your dry ingredients. I have 2 cups of milk. This milk needs to be between 110 and 120 degrees, and I'm going to put that in the microwave and heat it up, and I'm going to test it with my thermometer. I do use Fleischmann's. I know this is going to be backwards on the camera, but this is Fleischmann's Instant Dry Yeast. And I keep my yeast in the freezer. It will last a whole lot longer than if you keep it on the shelf or in your cupboard or wherever. I keep it, and not even in the refrigerator. I keep it in the freezer, and it keeps it inactive. And it activates when you mix it with heated ingredients, which I'm going to do with my milk. The milk needs to be 110 to 120. I've got it heated up, and it's perfect right now at 115. So now what I'm going to do, let me turn it down. I'm going to just put all of the ingredients in the vessel. The first thing I'm going to add are the eggs. 2 eggs. Don't forget to put the paddle in the bottom of your vessel. All right, I've got the 2 eggs. After the eggs, I'm going to add 2 teaspoons of melted butter, 2 cups of milk, and that is all of my wet ingredients. Now I'm going to add my flour, which actually this flour, I've already got the sugar and the salt. The sugar was 4 tablespoons and the salt was 2 teaspoons. I've got that blended well. I'm going to add that into this vessel. Now I'm going to just make a little well in the center, and that's where I'm going to put my 3 teaspoons of the instant yeast. It goes in dry. And that's all there is to it. It's the 5 cups of flour, 3 teaspoons of instant yeast, 4 tablespoons of sugar, 2 teaspoons of salt, 2 cups of warm milk, 110 to 120 degrees, 2 eggs that are room temperature, and then 2 teaspoons of melted butter. Now I'm going to put it in my machine. It goes in and it locks into place. You put it in and you turn it and it locks. I'm going to set it on 8. And that's an hour and 30 minutes. And then I'm going to hit start. And that's all there is to it. In an hour and a half, I will come back and take the dough out. We can embrace modern day equipment, such as bread machines, food processors, grinders, all kinds of modern day equipment for the kitchen that does help us do things a little more efficient. I, for one, enjoy the use of all the modern day equipment that I have. There's no shame, in my opinion, for using a bread machine or food processor or, electric knives, electric shredders, whatever the case may be, because that frees up your time and gives you time to do other things while something is in the making. For example, this bread recipe, this machine will take 90 minutes. That gives me time to do other things while I'm waiting on that machine to make my bread. What is great about it is it kneads the dough so well, it just makes that dough so silky and smooth, which leads to a beautiful loaf of bread. All right, it has been 90 minutes, and I'm going to go get my dough out of the bread machine, and I'm going to come and dump it in a bowl. Okay, I went and took the vessel out of the machine, and I thought I hit record and I did not. So I've already got it dumped in there. One thing you need to know is the paddle will most of the time get stuck when the dough gets dumped out, and you have to, dig your paddle out of your dough. I've dumped it into a very well-oiled bowl, and I'm just going to roll it around so that all sides of the dough is oiled. I think that will do it. You punch it down, which is just simply punching it. The sides and the bottom have a lot of oil in it. And I'm just going to cover it with a plate and let it sit for 1 hour. Okay, time is up, and this has risen. Look at how much it did rise. I'm going to roll this out on the counter and shape it for my bread pan. We're going to punch it down and dump it out. I want to make sure I get plenty of flour on my hands, and I'm going to roll this to try to shape it so that it fits in the pan. Oh, it is so silky, so soft. I'm not going to play with it too much. I just want to stretch it and roll it to fit the pan. And the pan, yeah, that's probably good. Now, this pan is non-stick surface. However, I still spray it with Pam. That way I can be sure that when I go to turn it out, it's going to dump out without tearing. Now, to get this into the pan, I just get it in there and I spread it out to fit the pan. Like so. If I turn it too much, it's going to roll down the pan. Now the last rise is 30 minutes in this pan. I'm just going to cover it with a tea towel and set it aside. And we'll set my timer for 30 minutes. So while that last rise is taking place, I will wait until the last 10 minutes of the rise and I will preheat my oven. 375 is the temperature that I'm going to put it on. When it reaches temperature, I'm going to wait at least 7 minutes, maybe up to 10, to let the oven stabilize before I put my bread in. You know, this process for making this particular recipe, it takes 3 hours. It takes an hour and a half in the bread maker, and then it takes an hour to do a second rise in the bowl, and then 30 minutes in the baking pan. So it's a total of 3 hours. That is a lot of time to wait, but it is so worth it. And in the meantime, I have time to do chores and get other things done without really having to get my hands too dirty. It's a very simple process, and if you have a bread maker, it is so worth doing. All right, that last 30 minutes has passed. I preheated my oven and then I let it sit for 7 minutes after the timer went off, telling me that it was preheated. If you've watched any previous videos, I believe letting that oven sit for about 7 minutes or so after your timer goes off, that allows the oven to, you know, stabilize and not fluctuate up and down, because there is a lot of fluctuation. Once it reaches temperature, it'll go up and down by a degree or two for just a few minutes. So I've let that oven stabilize and the bread is ready to go into the oven, and it has risen very well. So I'm going to put it in the oven and I'm going to set my timer for 22 minutes. And that should do it. And we'll see how good that loaf of bread turns out. All right, time is up. Two pounds of bread. I'm going to see if I can dump it out right here. Because I don't want it cooling in the pan. There we go. That is hot. Look at that. Is that not gorgeous? And it smells so good. I'm going to get a rack to put this on because if it sits, it's going to sweat on the bottom. And I would rather it sit on a rack. There. So now airflow can get under it and it won't sweat. It actually had already started sweating right there. So I'm going to let this completely cool before I cut this. It's pretty, isn't it? Had a little bubble right here, but that's okay. That's going to be a lot of slices of bread. And I will make another batch later today so that I have 2 loaves of bread. Now what I did was covered my bread with a tea towel just to, let it cool down. And now I'm going to cut it and let's see what it looks like. So here it is, nice and fluffy, very soft. Cut it however thick you want it. Of course, I've got to have a taste. It's delicious. Every time. It's better than loaf bread from the store, I promise you. It's so pretty, I hate to cut it. That is so good. If you like this video, hit the thumbs up, give it a like, share it with others, and maybe subscribe to my channel. Thank you for stopping by, and I hope that y'all have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.